August 15, 1943. Camp Hearn, Texas. The morning sun blazed mercilessly across the East Texas prairie as 2,847 German prisoners of war stumbled from cattle cars onto American soil for the first time. Among them, Oberstfreiter Klaus Weber clutched his meager possessions, a torn uniform, a prayer book, and the bitter memory of surrender in Tunisia 3 months earlier. Weber had survived Rommel's retreat through the Kasserine Pass, the final desperate stands at Medellin and Mareth, and the cramped Atlantic crossing aboard the Liberty ship SS Robert E. Lee. The 23-year-old tank gunner from a small farming village outside Dresden had witnessed the collapse of the Afrika Korps, but nothing in his military experience had prepared him for what awaited him in the mess hall of an American prisoner of war camp. The wooden barracks of Camp Hearn stretched across 680 acres of former cotton fields, hastily constructed in 4 months to house the growing influx of Axis prisoners. The camp's commandant, Colonel James A. Ulio, had received explicit orders from the War Department: treat prisoners according to Geneva Convention standards while extracting maximum labor value for the American war effort. What neither Ulio nor his superiors anticipated was how profoundly American abundance would affect men who had known only scarcity. Weber joined the processing line with his fellow prisoners, each man photographed, fingerprinted, and assigned a POW number. The efficiency impressed him. American clerks processed hundreds of men hourly with mechanical precision that surpassed anything he had witnessed in the Wehrmacht. But efficiency was merely the prelude to revelation. At 1,200 hours, the prisoners were marched to the mess hall for their first American meal. The building itself astounded them. Electric lights blazed overhead despite the bright daylight outside. Fans circulated air through the cavernous space, and the concrete floor sparkled with fresh mopping. In Germany, even officer mess halls rarely displayed such casual luxury. Mess Sergeant Earl Morrison, a heavy-set man from Montgomery, Alabama, supervised the serving line with the bored efficiency of a man accustomed to feeding multitudes. Morrison had managed the kitchen at a civilian conservation corps camp before the war and approached feeding German prisoners with the same industrial methodology he had used for unemployed Americans during the Depression. The serving line revealed the first shock: abundance beyond comprehension. Steam tables held quantities of food that could have fed Weber's entire company for a week during the final months in Africa. White bread, actual white bread made from wheat flour, sat stacked in towering pyramids. Fresh vegetables, unknown in German field rations since 1941, filled serving trays. Real coffee, not the chicory substitute that had passed for coffee in the Wehrmacht, filled enormous urns. But the centerpiece of confusion awaited at the sandwich station, where Morrison personally supervised the preparation of what he called PB&J, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Weber watched in bewilderment as kitchen staff spread thick layers of brown paste across slices of white bread with the casual efficiency of assembly line workers. Morrison approached Weber's position in line, holding a completed sandwich like a teacher displaying educational materials. The brown substance gleamed under the electric lights, its texture resembling axle grease, but carrying a faintly sweet aroma that contradicted its appearance. Peanut butter sandwich, son, Morrison explained through the camp translator, Sergeant First Class Heinrich Boll, a German-American from Milwaukee whose parents had immigrated before the First World War. Ground peanuts mixed with oil, salt, and sugar. Every American kid grows up eating these. Weber accepted his tray containing 2 sandwiches, a cup of real coffee, a piece of apple pie, and a small carton of milk. The portions defied logic. More food than he had received in a single meal since leaving Germany 18 months earlier. Around him, 2,800 other prisoners examined their trays with similar bewilderment. Feldwebel Ernst Hoffmann, a master baker from Hamburg's historic Speicherstadt district, bit tentatively into his peanut butter sandwich. His weathered face, marked by 3 years of war and 6 months of captivity, registered confusion, then surprise, then something approaching wonder. Mein Gott, Hoffmann whispered to Weber. It tastes like marzipan, but with meat. The protein is overwhelming. The comparison was apt, but incomplete. Peanut butter delivered protein density that exceeded most German field rations, combined with fat content that provided immediate satiation. The sweetness came from added sugar, Sugar used casually, wastefully, for flavor enhancement rather than survival necessity. Weber's first bite triggered a cascade of sensory memories. The richness recalled peacetime Sunday dinners. The sweetness evoked childhood holidays. The protein density satisfied a hunger that had gnawed at him since Stalingrad. But the psychological impact transcended mere nutrition. This was food as pleasure rather than sustenance, calories consumed for enjoyment rather than survival. Unterscharführer Wolfgang Richter, who had commanded a Panzer IV crew in Rommel's final offensive, possessed an engineer's mind that constantly calculated efficiency and resource allocation. He examined his sandwich with scientific precision, estimating ingredient costs and manufacturing complexity. "They waste protein like we waste water," Richter observed. "This single sandwich contains more nutrients than a German worker receives in 3 days of rationing. They serve it to enemy prisoners as casual refreshment." Dr. Friedrich Bohm, captured medical officer from the 21st Panzer Division, approached the peanut butter sandwich with clinical analysis. His medical training allowed precise nutritional calculation. Approximately 300 calories per sandwich, 12 grams of protein, 16 grams of fat. More nutrition than most German civilians received in an entire day. The milk carton presented its own revelation. Fresh milk, pasteurized and chilled, had disappeared from German tables except for children and pregnant women. Here, grown men, enemy soldiers, received milk as standard provision. The dairy industry implied by such casual distribution suggested agricultural abundance that dwarfed German comprehension. Private Tommy Chun, a Chinese-American guard from San Francisco's Chinatown, supervised the meal with casual efficiency. Chun had volunteered for guard duty specifically to observe enemy prisoners, driven by curiosity about the men whose armies had killed his cousin in the Pacific Theater. "First time eating peanut butter?" Chun asked through Sergeant Bull, noticing Weber's methodical consumption pattern. Weber nodded, still chewing slowly, analyzing flavors his palate had never encountered. The richness coated his mouth, the salt enhanced the natural oils, the sugar provided background sweetness that made the protein palatable rather than merely nutritious. "My little sister eats that stuff every day for lunch," Chun continued. "School gives it to her free in the cafeteria. Every American kid grows up eating peanut butter sandwiches. Most of them get tired of it by high school." The translation struck Weber like a physical blow. Children, enemy children, consumed daily what represented luxury to captured German soldiers. American schools served free lunches that exceeded officer rations in the Wehrmacht. The implications challenged every assumption about American industrial capacity and social organization. Sergeant Morrison approached the German table carrying additional sandwiches on a serving tray. His easy smile contradicted the grim efficiency most prisoners expected from enemy guards. "You boys want seconds? Got plenty more in the kitchen. Cook made extra today since it's your first day." The offer of additional food, unlimited food, to enemy prisoners violated every principle of military economy Weber had learned. In the Wehrmacht, second helpings existed only for officers, and then only when supplies permitted. The casual waste implied by unlimited prisoner rations suggested resources beyond mathematical calculation. Weber accepted a second sandwich, studying Morrison's face for signs of deception or mockery. He found neither. The American sergeant displayed the bored efficiency of a man performing routine duty, feeding enemies with the same mechanical precision he might use to feed livestock. Hoffman leaned across the table, his baker's instincts analyzing ingredients and preparation methods. "In Hamburg, my bakery served the finest families in the city. Our most expensive pastries required less sugar than they put in this prison food. The sweetener alone represents more value than my monthly profit." The afternoon brought additional revelations that challenged German understanding of resource allocation. Following lunch, American guards distributed small packages to each prisoner. 5 sticks of Wrigley's spearmint chewing gum, individually wrapped in foil and paper. Weber held the package as if it contained military intelligence, studying the bright green wrapper with its cheerful advertising graphics. Corporal James Sullivan from Boston's Irish neighborhoods demonstrated proper chewing technique, working his jaw rhythmically while explaining through the translator. "You chew it, but don't swallow. Keeps your mouth fresh, helps you concentrate. Supposed to be good for your teeth too, according to the advertisements." The concept revolutionized Weber's understanding of food and consumption. This was nourishment without nutrition, consumption without caloric purpose. Sugar used not for survival, but for recreational pleasure. The psychological luxury of purposeless consumption challenged fundamental assumptions about scarcity that had governed German thinking throughout the war. Dr. Bohm examined the gum wrapper with medical precision, reading ingredient lists and calculating nutritional content. This single stick contains approximately 2 grams of refined sugar, he announced to Weber. More than most German children receive in weekly rations. They manufacture it specifically for recreational purposes. The gum's flavor explosion overwhelmed Weber's unprepared palate. Spearmint oil, refined sugar, artificial flavoring, and corn syrup combined to create sweetness more intense than any confection he had known. The flavor lasted, impossibly, wonderfully, for hours, providing continuous sensory pleasure without nutritional purpose. Weber worked the gum methodically, his jaw muscles unaccustomed to the repetitive motion. Around him, fellow prisoners experimented with bubble-blowing techniques demonstrated by amused American guards. The sight of hardened Wehrmacht veterans attempting to blow bubbles provided comic relief that transcended language barriers. That evening, German prisoners lay in their electrically lit barracks, chewing American gum while processing the day's revelations. Many saved their remaining sticks, rationing them carefully according to habits learned during years of scarcity. Others chewed until their jaws ached, unable to waste such unprecedented luxury. The barracks themselves provided additional shocks to men accustomed to military austerity. Electric lights burned throughout the night. Guards explained this was for security, but the casual waste of electricity exceeded anything in German civilian experience. Steam radiators maintained comfortable temperatures regardless of weather. Hot water flowed from faucets without restriction. Weber calculated the resource implications while chewing his carefully rationed gum. The electricity consumed by a single barracks exceeded what his entire village had used before the war. The hot water represented fuel expenditure that could have heated German homes for weeks. The casual waste demonstrated wealth beyond comprehension. Weber wrote his first letter home that night, struggling to describe experiences that defied credible explanation. Mein Liebster Eva, the Americans feed us better than we ate before the war. Today they gave us a brown paste made from nuts that tastes better than holiday meals, and candy that you chew but never swallow. I fear everything our leaders told us was lies. September 3, 1943. The establishment of the post exchange at Camp Herne introduced German prisoners to the full scope of American consumer culture. What the Americans called simply the PX represented a revolution in prisoner treatment that violated every assumption about military economy the Germans had learned during 5 years of total war. Colonel Julio had initially resisted implementing a prisoner PX, viewing it as unnecessary luxury for enemy combatants. However, directives from the Provost Marshal General's office emphasized the psychological value of allowing prisoners to make consumer choices, theorizing that exposure to American abundance would prove more effective than traditional re-education programs. The PX building, constructed in just 3 weeks by prisoner labor, occupied 2,400 square feet of the camp's administrative area. American contractors supplied shelving, cash registers, and refrigeration equipment with the same efficiency they brought to supplying forward combat units. The speed of construction impressed German prisoners who had watched Wehrmacht engineering projects drag on for months due to material shortages. Weber approached the PX's grand opening with the methodical curiosity of a farmer examining new agricultural equipment. His weekly credit allowance of 80 cents, earned through camp labor at the standard rate of 10 cents per day, represented more purchasing power than many German civilians possessed during the war's 4th year. The store's inventory defied rational explanation. Entire shelves devoted to candy varieties Weber had never imagined. Hershey's chocolate bars, Baby Ruth, Butterfinger, Snickers, Lifesavers, and dozens of regional specialties. The chocolate section alone represented more cocoa than Germany had imported during the entire previous year. Sergeant First Class Robert Morrison, Earl Morrison's younger brother and the PX's manager, had transferred from civilian retail in Montgomery specifically to oversee prisoner commerce. His experience managing Kress 5 and Dime had prepared him for inventory control, but not for the cultural education he was about to provide. Weber examined the candy section with methodical precision, his farmer's instincts analyzing abundance and waste ratios. In Germany, chocolate was reserved for officers or special occasions when available at all. The ersatz chocolate distributed to civilians contained more sawdust than cocoa, sweetened with saccharin that left bitter aftertastes. Here, enemy prisoners could purchase authentic Hershey's bars for 5 cents each, less than 1 hour's camp wages. Weber unwrapped his first purchase slowly, anticipating deception or inferior quality. Instead, he discovered chocolate that exceeded peacetime German standards, smooth and rich without adulterants or substitutes. Unterscharfer Richter studied the pricing structure with an engineer's appreciation for efficiency. A Hershey's bar costs 5 cents. German officers pay 3 Reichsmarks for inferior chocolate when they can find it. The exchange rate makes American chocolate 1/10 the cost of German ersatz. The mathematics of abundance extended beyond pricing to availability. The PX maintained inventory levels that exceeded the chocolate consumption of entire German cities. Delivery trucks arrived weekly from Dallas, restocking shelves without regard for rationing or conservation. The casual waste implied by such abundance challenged fundamental assumptions about resource allocation during wartime. Dr. Bohm selected multiple chocolate varieties, approaching candy consumption with scientific methodology. His medical training demanded analysis of ingredients, processing methods, and nutritional content. Each variety revealed different approaches to the same basic formula: cocoa, sugar, milk, and various additives. "This chocolate contains pure cocoa butter," he announced to Weber after examining a Hershey's bar. "No substitutes, no adulterants." They mass-produce luxury and sell it to prisoners at prices German factories couldn't match using inferior ingredients. The chewing gum section presented even greater abundance. Weber counted 14 different brands and twice as many flavors: Wrigley's spearmint, peppermint, and juicy fruit, chiclets in multiple colors, beechnut varieties, and regional brands he couldn't identify. The selection exceeded what most German cities had offered during peacetime prosperity. Feldwebel Hoffmann approached gum selection with professional interest, his baker's training analyzing flavoring techniques and manufacturing processes. "In my shop, I sold 3 types of hard candy when sugar was available. Here, they offer more gum flavors than Germany produced candy varieties before the war." Weber selected juicy fruit, attracted by its exotic tropical flavor promise and bright yellow packaging. The first bite delivered sweetness beyond his experience. Concentrated fruit essences, refined sugar, and artificial flavoring combined to create taste sensations unavailable in Europe. The tropical flavors suggested access to global markets that German naval blockade had severed years earlier. The psychological impact extended beyond mere consumption. The act of choosing between flavors, of making consumer decisions based on personal preference rather than availability, restored agency that military life had eliminated. Prisoners found themselves debating gum selections with the seriousness of strategic planning. "I spent 20 minutes choosing between spearmint and juicy fruit," Richter told Dr. Bohm. "6 months ago, I commanded tanks in North Africa. Now I debate candy flavors like a child in a sweet shop." This abundance transforms soldiers into consumers. The cigarette section provided additional cultural education. American brands, Lucky Strike, Camel, Chesterfield, Philip Morris, sat stacked in quantities that dwarfed German tobacco production. Each pack contained 20 cigarettes of uniform quality, a stark contrast to German cigarettes that varied dramatically based on available tobacco supplies. Private First Class Anthony Kowalski from Detroit's Polish district managed cigarette sales with the efficiency of a factory worker. His family had operated a corner store before the war, teaching him consumer psychology that proved valuable in prisoner management. Weber purchased a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes, his first American tobacco experience. The uniform quality impressed him. Each cigarette contained identical amounts of properly cured tobacco, without the stems, substitutes, or adulterants that characterized German wartime cigarettes. The smooth draw and even burn rate demonstrated manufacturing precision that exceeded German peacetime standards. The toiletries section revealed additional abundance in personal care products. Soap, toothpaste, shampoo, shaving cream, and aftershave filled shelves in varieties that exceeded what German pharmacies had offered before the war. The casual availability of such luxury items to enemy prisoners challenged assumptions about American resource allocation. Dr. Boehm examined Colgate toothpaste with medical interest, reading ingredient lists and analyzing fluoride content. This toothpaste contains more active ingredients than German medical facilities possess. They provide superior dental care products to prisoners than we offer German civilians. The PX's refrigerated section housed fresh milk, ice cream, and soft drinks that represented the apex of American abundance display. Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and regional beverages sat chilled and ready for consumption. The electricity required for refrigeration exceeded what entire German towns consumed, yet here it preserved luxury beverages for enemy prisoners. Weber purchased a Coca-Cola, his first experience with carbonated soft drinks. The intense sweetness overwhelmed his palate. Corn syrup, caramel flavoring, caffeine, and phosphoric acid combined to create taste sensations unknown in Europe. The casual consumption of such concentrated luxury challenged every assumption about resource conservation during wartime. The economic implications became clear through Richter's calculations. This single bottle of Coca-Cola contains more sugar than a German family receives in monthly rations. They manufacture it for recreational consumption and sell it to prisoners for pocket change. The magazine and book section provided intellectual abundance alongside material excess. Current issues of Life, Saturday Evening Post, Popular Mechanics, and National Geographic sat available for purchase or borrowing. The printing quality exceeded German standards, with color photography and paper quality that demonstrated industrial capacity devoted to information distribution. Weber selected a copy of Life magazine, amazed by color photographs that documented American life during wartime. Images of well-fed children, abundant food displays, and industrial facilities challenged every piece of German propaganda about American weakness and division. The psychological transformation was visible within days of the PX opening. Prisoners who had shuffled listlessly through their first weeks were walking with renewed energy, engaging in conversations about purchases and choices, displaying interest in American products and culture. Dr. Boehm began documenting what he privately termed abundance syndrome among the prisoners. Men who had arrived desperate and defeated were gaining weight, not just from adequate nutrition, but from recreational eating. Soldiers who had fought for survival were learning to consume for pleasure. The Americans understand something we missed, he wrote in his hidden diary. Morale comes not just from adequate supplies, but from surplus. A soldier who can waste sugar on chewing gum feels invincible. An army that can afford to feed its enemies luxury believes absolutely in its victory. The camp's movie theater provided additional cultural education. Hollywood films, shown weekly in the recreation hall, exposed prisoners to American entertainment industry production values that exceeded German standards. The casual portrayal of abundance in American films reinforced lessons learned through daily experience. Weber watched Gone with the Wind, amazed by production values and storytelling techniques that surpassed German cinema. The film's portrayal of American defeat and recovery resonated with his own situation, while the casual display of antebellum luxury demonstrated American understanding of abundance even in historical context. The transformation extended beyond individual prisoners to group dynamics. Men who had maintained military discipline through defeat and captivity began forming social groups based on shared interests rather than military hierarchy. The abundance had restored humanity that warfare had suppressed. Evening conversations in the barracks shifted from complaints about captivity to discussions of American manufacturing methods, agricultural techniques, and social organization. Prisoners who had arrived as enemies were becoming students of the society that had defeated them. Weber's letters home began reflecting this transformation. Eva, they sell us chocolate better than anything we knew in peacetime. The candy contains more sugar than our entire village receives. I begin to understand why they won the war. A nation that can waste such resources on enemies possesses power beyond our imagination. November 15, 1943. The monthly mail delivery brought letters from Germany that created profound cognitive dissonance for the well-fed, gum-chewing prisoners in American camps. Weber received a letter from his wife, Eva, describing the turnip winter, ration bread made with sawdust, and children who had forgotten the taste of real chocolate. Her words painted a picture of desperation that contrasted sharply with his current reality. Klaus, mein Liebster, little Anna asked me yesterday what chocolate tastes like. I could not answer because I have forgotten myself. The ration cards promise jam twice monthly, but the stores have been empty since October. We eat turnip soup and are grateful. Weber sat in the camp recreation room, methodically chewing Wrigley's spearmint gum while reading about his daughter's hunger. The cognitive dissonance was unbearable. His child was starving while he, an enemy prisoner, had access to more sugar than a German pharmacy. His wife worked 12-hour shifts in a munitions factory for subsistence rations while he gained weight on American prison food supplemented with candy bars. His response, carefully censored by American authorities, tried to convey his experience without violating security regulations. Mein Liebster Eva, the Americans treat us according to international law. Better than law requires. They provide adequate food and necessities. I save small items to bring home someday, when this war ends. The censors, trained to remove strategic information, found themselves puzzling over descriptions of abundance that seemed too fantastic to be intelligence leaks. Lieutenant Colonel William Harrison, chief censor at Camp Hearn, documented this phenomenon in his weekly reports to the Provost Marshal General's office. The prisoners' letters home consistently described treatment so generous that German families refused to believe them. Harrison wrote, "We are accidentally conducting psychological warfare through simple adherence to Geneva Convention standards. Their families think they are lying about American abundance." Dr. Bohm received devastating news from Cologne. His medical practice had been destroyed in Allied bombing. His wife Martha was working in a munitions factory for bread rations, and his daughter Ingrid was showing signs of malnutrition. The contrast with his current situation created psychological trauma that exceeded combat stress. That evening, he sat in the camp library, methodically chewing juicy fruit gum while reading American medical journals provided by the Red Cross. Current issues of the Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, and specialized surgical publications sat freely available to enemy prisoners. The medical knowledge contained in these journals exceeded what German universities had possessed before the war. Descriptions of new surgical techniques, pharmaceutical developments, and diagnostic equipment revealed American medical advancement that surpassed German achievements by years. "I am learning medicine that could save my daughter's life," he wrote in his hidden diary, "while she starves because I am not there to provide for her." The Americans share advanced medical knowledge with enemy prisoners, while German children die from malnutrition that American medicine could easily treat. The camp's monthly inspection by International Red Cross representatives provided another shock to German prisoners' understanding of their situation. Dr. Heinrich Rothmund from Geneva, representing Swiss interests, expressed amazement at prisoner treatment that exceeded Geneva Convention requirements. Rothmund's inspection report, preserved in Red Cross archives, documented conditions that surpassed those in many neutral countries. German prisoners of war in American custody receive nutrition superior to that available to Swiss civilians under wartime rationing. Medical care exceeds standards found in most European hospitals. Educational opportunities surpass those available in German universities before the war. Unterscharfer Richter began calculating the economic implications of American prisoner treatment, applying his engineering training to resource analysis. Each prisoner consumed approximately 50 cents worth of luxury items weekly: candy, gum, cigarettes, and toiletries that didn't exist in German prisoner rations. "They spend more on our recreational needs than the Wehrmacht spends feeding an entire company," he told Weber. Multiplied across 371,000 German prisoners, America wastes more resources on enemy comfort than Germany spends on officer privileges. The holiday season brought the most devastating revelation of American generosity toward enemies. Thanksgiving 1943 featured a feast that exceeded what most German families had enjoyed before the war: turkey, ham, stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls with real butter, apple pie, and ice cream. Weber sat before this abundance, thinking of his daughter who had never tasted turkey, his wife who hadn't seen real butter since 1940, and his neighbors who would consider a single dinner roll a weekly luxury. The psychological weight was crushing. American civic organizations, churches, and individuals sent Christmas packages to German prisoners, enemies who had been trying to kill American soldiers months earlier. Weber received a package from the Methodist Church of Hearne, Texas, containing homemade cookies, chocolate bars, chewing gum, a knitted scarf, and a handwritten note. The note was signed by Mrs. Dorothy Henderson, whose son James was fighting with the Pacific Fleet. To our German friend, may God bless you and bring you home safely to your family. We pray for peace and your reunion with loved ones. Weber stared at the note, unable to comprehend such kindness from the mother of his enemy. Her son was risking his life fighting against German forces, yet she showed concern for enemy welfare that exceeded what many German officials displayed toward their own soldiers. The Christmas cookies, baked by enemy hands, tasted better than anything in his memory. Each bite represented hours of labor by American women who could have been making weapons instead of treats for enemies. The psychological impact transcended mere nutrition. They defeat us with kindness, Weber wrote to his wife. Not propaganda, not speeches, but chocolate and concern. How do you fight people who feed their enemies better than we feed our children? Christmas dinner at Camp Hearne featured a feast that defied comprehension. Turkey, ham, stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, rolls with butter, apple pie, and ice cream. Each prisoner also received special dessert, chocolate cake with peppermint frosting, accompanied by after-dinner mints. The meal contained more sugar than most German families consumed in a month. The dairy products, milk, butter, cream, ice cream, represented luxuries that had disappeared from German tables in 1941. The white flour in bread and cake was higher quality than German officers received in field rations. Gefreiter Hans Müller, overwhelmed by the abundance, began crying during dessert. When questioned by Sergeant Bull, he explained, "In Hamburg, children die for want of milk. Here, prisoners eat ice cream. What kind of war are we fighting? What kind of people waste such wealth on enemies?" The psychological transformation was documented in camp reports filed by intelligence officers tasked with monitoring prisoner morale. Major Paul Newland, assigned to the Prisoner of War Special Projects Division, noted increasing requests for American newspapers, books, and educational materials. The prisoners no longer argue when shown production statistics, Newland reported in December 1943. They have witnessed too much evidence. The most fanatical Nazis have become quiet. They still maintain loyalty to Germany, but no longer speak of victory. Many openly question what they were told about America. Dr. Bohm began corresponding with American medical colleagues, exchanges that revealed the full scope of American scientific advancement. Physicians at Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Massachusetts General Hospital shared research findings with an enemy prisoner more freely than German universities had shared knowledge with their own students. "American doctors treat me as a colleague rather than an enemy," he wrote to Martha. "They send medical journals, research papers, and equipment specifications that exceed anything available in Germany. They advance medical science while we retreat into ignorance and propaganda." The camp newspapers, produced by prisoners themselves under American supervision, began reflecting ideological transformation. Der Ruf, published at Camp Hearne, gradually shifted from defiant nationalism to discussions of democracy, economic systems, and post-war reconstruction. Weber contributed articles about American agricultural methods, comparing Texas farming techniques with German practices. His engineering background allowed detailed analysis of mechanization, fertilization, and crop rotation methods that exceeded German agricultural science. "They produce more food per acre using machines than we produce using slave labor," he wrote. "American farmers achieve, through efficiency, what we attempt through conquest. Their methods could feed Europe if applied with proper knowledge." The camp's educational programs provided additional evidence of American generosity toward enemies. University correspondence courses, library access, and vocational training exceeded what many German civilians had received during peacetime. Prisoners who had arrived as enemies were becoming educated advocates for American methods. Weber enrolled in English classes, agricultural science courses, and democratic government seminars. The knowledge gained exceeded what German universities had provided, while the teaching methods emphasized critical thinking rather than rote memorization. "They educate enemies better than we educate our own citizens," he told Dr. Bohm. American teachers encourage questions and debate. German teachers demanded obedience and repetition. I learned more as a prisoner than I did as a free citizen. The transformation was visible in prisoner behavior and attitudes. Men who had arrived hollow-eyed and defeated were gaining weight, participating in educational programs, and expressing genuine curiosity about American culture. The abundance had restored humanity that warfare had suppressed. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison documented this change in his final report of 1943. German prisoners of war have undergone complete psychological transformation through exposure to American abundance. They arrived as Nazi soldiers and are becoming democratic students. The change represents successful re-education through demonstration rather than propaganda. Weber's year-end letter to Eva captured the complete ideological collapse. Mein Liebster, everything we were told was lies. America is not weak or divided. They are the strongest nation on earth, and they use that strength with generosity that shames our brutality. I fear we never had a chance against such people. March 15, 1945. As Germany collapsed and repatriation loomed, the psychological transformation of German prisoners was complete. Weber had gained 40 pounds during captivity, learned conversational English, and developed what Dr. Bohm termed abundance anxiety, psychological distress about returning to scarcity after experiencing plenty. The camp's atmosphere had changed dramatically since 1943. What began as a prison facility had evolved into an educational institution where former enemies studied American methods with the enthusiasm of graduate students. Weber spent his final months taking detailed notes on agricultural techniques, manufacturing processes, and democratic governance that he hoped to implement in post-war Germany. His notebook, preserved in family papers donated to the Bundesarchiv in 1987, contained meticulous documentation of American efficiency methods, crop rotation schedules that doubled yields, mechanization techniques that reduced labor requirements, and fertilization programs that restored soil fertility rather than depleting it. Every day I learned something that could improve German agriculture, Weber wrote. American farmers achieved through science what we attempted through conquest. Their methods could feed Europe if properly applied. The final psychological blow came with American newsreels showing the liberation of concentration camps in Germany. German prisoners, well-fed on American abundance, watched footage of starving inmates in their homeland. The contrast was devastating. German prisoners in America looked healthier than German civilians, while German-run camps produced walking skeletons. The screening took place in the Camp Theater on April 20, 1945, Hitler's birthday, a date that carried bitter irony for the assembled prisoners. As images of Buchenwald, Dachau, and Bergen-Belsen filled the screen, grown men wept openly. The systematic starvation of concentration camp inmates contrasted sharply with the generous treatment they had received as enemy prisoners. We fed our enemies better than we fed our victims, Weber wrote in his final camp diary entry. The Americans showed us what civilized people do. We showed the world what barbarians we had become. Dr. Bohm, who had maintained detailed medical records throughout captivity, documented the physical transformation of German prisoners under American care. Average weight gain exceeded 35 pounds per prisoner. Dental health improved dramatically due to American medical care. Mortality rates among German prisoners in American camps were lower than German civilian death rates during the same period. American prison camps were healthier than German cities, he noted in his medical summary. Enemy prisoners received better nutrition than German children, superior medical care than German hospitals could provide, and more educational opportunities than German universities offered. The distribution of going-home packages provided the final lesson in American abundance. Each returning prisoner received supplies that exceeded what most German families had possessed before the war. 5 pounds of mixed candy, 10 packs of chewing gum, 2 cartons of cigarettes, complete toiletries, civilian clothing, and $20 in cash for travel expenses. Weber examined his going-home package with wonder that transcended mere gratitude. The candy alone represented more wealth than many prisoners had possessed before the war. American authorities, concerned about post-war German nutrition, included vitamin supplements and dietary instructions translated into German. They give us wealth to take home, while German children haven't tasted chocolate in 3 years, he told Dr. Bohm. This generosity from victors defies comprehension. The final weeks of captivity were spent preparing for return to a destroyed nation. American authorities provided vocational training, agricultural education, and political instruction designed to help former prisoners participate in democratic reconstruction. The knowledge transferred exceeded what German universities had provided during peacetime. Weber received certification in modern agricultural techniques from Texas A&M University Extension Services. His training included soil science, mechanized farming, crop rotation, and livestock management that surpassed German agricultural education. American professors treated enemy prisoners as serious students rather than defeated enemies. They prepare us to rebuild our country better than before, Weber wrote to Eva. American teachers share knowledge that could transform German agriculture. They give defeated enemies tools for prosperity rather than punishment for defeat. The journey home in May 1945 reversed the psychological transformation of 1943. Ships that had carried defeated soldiers to abundance now returned educated men to devastation. The contrast between American plenty and German destruction was stark and immediate. Weber's first sight of Hamburg revealed a city of rubble populated by walking skeletons in rags. His wife Eva, gaunt and prematurely aged, stared at his well-fed appearance with mixture of joy and bewilderment. The chocolate bars he had saved from his going-home package seemed obscene in the face of such desperate hunger. "Klaus, you look healthier than when you left for Africa," Eva whispered, touching his filled-out face with trembling fingers. "How is this possible when we have suffered such hunger?" Weber shared his American chocolate with neighborhood children who had never tasted such sweetness. The Wrigley's gum he distributed created small riots of excitement among children who fought over individual sticks. Products that were casual purchases in American PX stores became precious treasures in devastated Germany. The returning prisoners became unwitting ambassadors for American prosperity and democratic values. Their stories of abundance seemed like fantasies to starving civilians, but the physical evidence was undeniable. Men who had left Germany as conquering soldiers returned as witnesses to their enemies' overwhelming wealth and surprising humanity. Weber used his American agricultural knowledge to establish a small farming cooperative outside Hamburg. His mechanization techniques, learned from Texas farmers, increased crop yields by 300% over traditional German methods. His success attracted attention.